9:14, welcome back. Retired NASA astronaut Terry Virts is on a new mission to deliver ambulances in Ukraine amid the country's ongoing war with Russia. He joins us now to talk more about his effort. Good morning. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Talk to us about this mission, what it entails and how it's unfolding.
So Ukraine Focus is an organization that's been delivering mostly ambulances, but also other emergency medical vehicles ever since the beginning of the full-scale war. So for the last 2.5 years, they've delivered about 210 ambulances and a few dozen other emergency medical vehicles. So they're really focused on helping the people of Ukraine as they have these medical problems. There's a place for military aid, there's a place for government aid, but Ukraine Focus is focused on the medical aspect of aid.
Wow, that's really incredible. You know, the need is so great and it's ever evolving. And as you mentioned, we're now, 2.5 years into this war and people are still in great need. What inspired you, Terry, to get involved and help Ukrainians?
Yeah, I have a long history. There's an organization called AFS, American Field Service, and in World War I, it was an organization of American volunteers who drove ambulances, and then it turned into an exchange program. So when I was a teenager, I did an AFS exchange in Finland, and I lived with a Finnish family, and we were about 1 kilometer from the Soviet border. So I actually grew up as a teenager. I lived, they're right there on the Soviet border. That really affected me to see this kind of totalitarian state. And I joined the Air Force when I was 17, basically to defend Europe from the Russians. I grew up years later, became a NASA astronaut, learned Russian, had lots of great Russian friends, launched with the Russians on a Soyuz, lived with Russians on the space station. There was a day in 2015 where I was on the space station. My cosmonaut friend and I were looking out the window, going over Ukraine, and you could see red flashes. You could see bombs going off in Donbass when the Russians first invaded about a decade ago. And that was really profound. Like, I can't believe I'm watching war in Europe. So I've had this long kind of path to get me here, and it's been very frustrating. There's a lot of things I want to do. It feels like there's nothing I can do. And I got in contact with Ukraine Focus, which is actually a tangible thing that everybody can help, with donations. We can talk more about that here in a second. It's a volunteer organization, but it's one thing that I can do to help now that evil basically has returned to Europe with artillery and tanks. It's one thing you can do to help out.
Your experience as an astronaut and your time in space, I'm sure has led to many opportunities, and of course, it has given you a different type of perspective that not many of us really have on and many different issues. You talking about, watching bombings and attacks unfold from the window of the ISS is just so profound. Bring us back to that moment. I just want to focus on that a little more. What was that? Yeah. What were those moments like?
It really was profound. It was shocking. I saw a lot of things from space I did not expect to see. I did not expect to see war from space. And, one of the worst things of that whole experience was the cosmonaut I was with, a guy named Sasha Samokuchev. He and I, we didn't say a word. Our eyes were big. We were like, I can't believe what we're seeing. When he got back to Earth, he joined Putin's party, joined the Russian Duma, which is their Congress, and has been supporting the war. So you'd think that they'd be more, they know right from wrong, but it's been very disappointing to see several of the cosmonauts I was with in space, actively supporting Putin. But it was heartbreaking to see this beautiful planet. It's a gorgeous planet. It's an amazing universe. And just to see, the tragedy, Ukraine's not the only place on Earth where there's bad things happening, but it is one place that I could see from space.
Yeah, that war, that conflict, absolutely devastating. Talk to us. I know you mentioned briefly how folks can get involved. I want to go back to that point so people can do so if they choose to do so.
Yeah. Of course. So there's Ukraine Focus, Google that. You can go to their website and donate. It's a completely volunteer organization. So the volunteer drivers, we take a caravan, usually of several dozen ambulances. They get delivered in France and we drive them to Ukraine. And it's all volunteer. So to pay for the vehicles, if first of all, if you're a mayor of a city and you've got some spare ambulances, Ukraine Focus can use them, or emergency medical kits with tourniquets. If you have equipment like that, we can use it.
Yeah.
So to pay for the vehicles and to maintain them, Ukraine doesn't want brand new shiny ambulances because the Russians actively target ambulances and they get blown up. Unfortunately, it's tragic. So we want used ambulances. We found that each one saves about 250 lives is kind of the data point before the vehicle either stops working or gets blown up. They can donate to it. They could drive. Most of our drivers are American. You have to pay for your own trip, so you can either raise money to fund, the travel, but it is a volunteer organization. It's not a free trip to Europe. But either volunteering or sending equipment or sending money. They need, like I said, it's not a government supported thing. It's a volunteer organization.
The vehicles, when you donate ambulances, are they ambulances that originate here in the U.S. or are they coming from different parts of Europe?
It's mostly U.S., although they do come from different parts of Europe. They have, some British right side steering wheel, right side drive vehicles, but it's mostly U.S. They're mostly in good condition. I was talking to a lady, there's an Australian lady who's married to an American who lives in France. And the last vehicle she drove, like the windows didn't work. And it's a 5 or 6 day trip and it was hot in Europe. So anyway, it's all kinds of vehicles.
Yeah, I spent time covering the war on 2 occasions, days after the invasion happened, and then 1 year later, we went over to Poland, and we followed a group called, at the time, Texas Baptist Men. They're now Texans on Mission, I believe, and it's boots on the ground. And so they talked about, everybody wanting to get involved, helping out, but it was easier for them to donate money than, ship things from the U.S. to Eastern Europe. So I was asking in that sense to see if it's easier to donate money or.
Yeah, money is always easiest, but the thing we need is actual ambulances or other vehicles, 4x4s. They're a lot of times soldiers, they'll get injured and they'll have to spend a week or 2 with their arm missing and a tourniquet on or something just horrendous because they don't have the vehicles to get them out because these drones are flying overhead with hand grenades and stuff, and it's just really tough. And there's a serious shortage. So like I said, if you're a mayor or a governor or you work in a hospital system, if you got some used F-250s or ambulances, they'll take those and they will ship them. They've got a deal, a good deal with a couple shipping companies, but money's always the easiest thing to do.
Good to know. Okay, Terry, what's next?
For Ukraine, for me, we'll be going over. I don't want to give the details of the trip, but it's later. In the next few months, we'll be going over, and then a few months later, I'll be going over again. So that's kind of the next step for Ukraine. Hopefully, what's next for our government is that we stop being so timid and stop preventing Ukraine from winning the war. That's a bigger picture. But in the short term, this is how we can help. And it's not soldiers that we're helping; it's also civilians. I mean, today, every day, 100% of every day, Russians bomb civilians. It's kind of hard to imagine. Houses, apartments, hospitals, electric facilities, heating facilities. Every day of the year, the Russians bomb and injure and kill Ukrainian civilians. So these vehicles also help civilians.
Yeah. Well, we so much appreciate your time this morning coming on the show and shedding light on the ever-evolving need Ukrainians face on a daily basis. Thank you, Terry.
Thanks for having me on.